I've been second my whole life. I was the second best player in high school. I was the second pick in the draft. I've been second in the MVP voting 3 times. I came in second in the finals. I'm tired of being second. I'm not going to settle for that. I'm done with it. When Kevin Durant said this to Sports Illustrated in 2013, the basketball universe cheered. This was in the midst of LeBron James's flirt with the dark side in Miami, and we were all enamored with the idea of LeBron James's failure. That's actually why I watched my very first NBA game, to watch LeBron James play in the hopes that he would lose. We rooted for his dethronement, for a challenger to emerge and commit basketball regicide, the idea of a small market savior who would slay the big city monster. And no player better embodied that idea than Kevin Durant. The soft-spoken all-world talent who was the most vital cog in a machine that was regularly competing for championships in a Midwestern market. We didn't want to see Kevin Durant come in second just as much as we didn't want to see LeBron come in first. 6 years later, Kevin Durant left the Golden State Warriors after a 3-year run that saw him take home 2 championships and 2 Finals MVP awards. For those 3 years, he was the best player on arguably the best basketball team that the NBA has ever produced. We got what we wanted. So how will we remember the years when Kevin Durant came in first? It's a hard question to answer because A, his career isn't over yet, and B, everyone's gonna have their own opinions. So right away, I'm gonna let you know, I'm pussying out. I'm straddling the line. I'm raising the question and telling you how I feel, but you have to come to your own conclusion and answer the question yourself. Most people won't remember it fondly, because on July 4th, 2016, Kevin Durant left the Oklahoma City Thunder in free agency to join the Golden State Warriors. Devoid of context, that sentence is so innocuous and mundane that it seems impossible to have inspired the amount of negativity that it has. Plenty of players, even all-time greats, have left the teams that drafted them so that they could validate their careers with a ring or to escape a shitty situation. Except Durant didn't leave a mediocre franchise to go join a promising up-and-comer. He left a championship contender, one that held the 3-1 lead over the Warriors, to join the Warriors. They were and are an icon in sports. They went 73-9. They had the greatest shooter of all time, a defensive player of the year, and the best 3-and-D guard in the league. Before they added Durant, the Warriors were already the best team in the league and were in the conversation for having the best season in history. And they were still able to be beaten. That was one of my favorite things about the Warriors. The Cavs pulled off the greatest comeback in basketball history right when we thought that the Warriors were laying the foundation of an inevitable dynasty. It proved to the world that the Warriors weren't invincible. The spirit of Kevin Garnett possessed the league, screaming inside of all of us. And then, poof. A month later, it was gone. When Kevin Durant joined the Warriors, we lost Durant as a sympathetic, venerated, admired, breathtaking player who was almost unanimously supported and liked by fans. We lost Steph as the leading man and maestro of the most entertaining offense I have ever seen. We lost an historically meaningful Cavs-Warriors rubber match that wasn't ridiculously tilted in the Warriors' favor. The Warriors as a likable and organic media darling that revolutionized basketball. The Thunder as the model and representative for small market teams who wanted to compete against heavyweights without compromising star power. The possibility that the Thunder could escape their fate in the teams that should've, would've, and could've won a title club. And we lost competitive balance throughout the NBA as a whole. Yes, I'm part of that crowd. It sucked to know almost definitively who was going to win the championship, barring injury. Those other dynasties that wrecked competitive balance were at least compelling, right? Bird and Magic might have streaked through the 80s and hogged all the rings, but their rivalry was compelling. Jordan did the same thing in the 90s, but his ascension to the throne was full of twists like his retirement, turns like signing Dennis Rodman, and expectations that were impossible to meet but were then exceeded. It was compelling. The Durant Warriors might have had their fair share of gossip and drama, but it wasn't anything that could create a storyline or narrative compelling enough to offset the looming inevitability of a Warriors championship. Of course, people will say that LeBron did the same thing when he left the Cavs to join the Heat, and part of that statement is true. LeBron left a small market team to join a much more star-studded squad in a temperate, coastal vacation destination. The hate that he received was similarly swift, relentless, and omnipresent. Joining Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade on the Miami Heat gave people the same impression, that the Heat would go on to win untold championships and lay waste to the rest of the NBA. LeBron even said as much.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
But they didn't. Because think about it. LeBron was joining a new team, Chris Bosh was joining a new team, and Dwayne Wade was being surrounded by a new team. They had to figure out their roles on the fly while facing such untold viciousness. It turned out that those three players together resulted in a great team that wasn't unbeatable. Plus, in a weird way that made it a little easier to stomach, LeBron made the full heel turn. He wore the mask. He embraced the role as the man in the arena. Sure, it might not have lasted, and it might not have been what he was most comfortable with, but it felt like he was saying, I get why you're mad. And also, I don't care. For me personally, the thing I still find trouble understanding is Durant's naivety about why fans were so upset. It seemed like he was always wanting and waiting for the public to make the swing back, especially after such a dominant stretch of basketball that saw him challenge and maybe supplant James on the league's hierarchy. James got the credit he deserved, especially after the 2013 finals. It was a gutty, intense, eternally memorable series that stood as a testament to just how good he was. That moment never came for Durant. For the Warriors, everything just came too easily. There are some who would defend Durant and other super dominant teams like Alabama football and UConn women's basketball by claiming that displeasure in watching a team double their opponent's score just proves that you don't actually love the sport. I just love to watch good football or good basketball, they say. My sports dick is so much bigger than yours because there's nothing I love watching more than a 31-point blowout. Maybe they are right. Maybe they have the Dirk Diggler of sports penises, and I'm the guy in the locker room who goes into the stall just to change my shorts. But who would rather watch a 4-game sweep than a 7-game thriller? Who would rather watch a blowout than a buzzer beater? Yes, there is something incredibly impressive about a team who exists on a level all their own, like the 73 win team. But the Durant Warriors felt so inorganic and unfair that it didn't seem impressive at all to me, and it led to moments of almost complete disinterest of the sport. Am I wrong though? Yeah, I didn't enjoy Durant on the Warriors, but 3 straight NBA Finals in that Western Conference is still impressive. Winning back-to-back titles is historically significant. Durant's play with the Warriors was every bit as breathtaking as it was when he was with the Thunder. The Warriors will be remembered as the team of the 2010s, just like the Lakers of the 2000s and the Bulls of the 90s, because Durant put them in a stratosphere whose air only 5 or 6 other teams have ever breathed. That's important, and the fact that I didn't like it is irrelevant. And it wasn't necessarily easy. The Rockets pushed him to a Game 7 in the 2018 Conference Finals after a Game 6 that Kerr calls his favorite game ever as a coach. The series was gutsy. It was intense. It was a comeback. It might not have been on the grandest stage possible, but it was a test that the Warriors passed. I don't need to go into his stats or his career accolades to tell you how good Durant is. He's the most versatile scorer to ever play basketball, one of the true unicorns in NBA history. He is a generational talent, an MVP, and a champion twice over. And I think the thing that upset me the most was the fact that when he went to Golden State, it felt like he put a cap on what his apex could be. He could play the best basketball of his life, but what would it really mean? Being on the Warriors allowed him to do that and play his best basketball and to win games, but it was like turning up the sliders on Madden. Oh, you threw for 700 yards and 12 touchdowns? Cool. Everything he did, and he did some incredible things, felt tainted in a way. For those 3 years, I was just trying to hold my breath and get through it. I wanted to get out on the other side so Durant could really go to a new team and really go try to reach his apex. And the idea of Durant going to the Knicks? One of the all-time greats going to a franchise whose historical and cultural significance is only matched by its ineptitude in an attempt to return said franchise to its rightful place in former glory? That's a Lord of the Rings-ass apex right there. And it seemed like we were really going to see him at least try to achieve it. I think that's why I felt okay about not liking him in the moment. He would play his role as the heel, but then he would go back to being a face. I wanted to root for him. I was waiting to root for him. I always thought he was going to move on and fulfill one of the grandest NBA destinies ever, and we would all look back on his days with the Warriors as more of a detour than a destination. And then he got hurt. Now he and Kyrie Irving are Brooklyn Nets. There's a chance that his apex is still coming. Delivering the Nets their first NBA title would be a hell of a feat. Never mind the fact that it would be coming after an injury as serious as an Achilles rupture. It's entirely possible. The Nets have been surging back to relevance and competence in recent years, and Durant and Irving deciding to go there exemplifies that. A championship there might be a little less poetic, but it would still be celebrated by the city of New York and by a franchise that has had valleys nearly as deep as the Knicks. If Durant can win a title in Brooklyn, some of the edges of his legacy will get smoothed. I don't think I'll ever be able to appreciate those Warriors teams as much as they might deserve. As great as they were, there are thorns about them that I just don't expect I'll ever reconcile. I certainly won't be putting on their highlights with my friends to reminisce about our favorite teams. But as much as I try to avoid talking about how good they really were, I do still acknowledge how insanely good they were, because there's also a chance that his apex has already happened. There's a chance that the Durant that received as much criticism as any player I can remember after he made the weakest move ever, and the one that people called a snake and a cupcake, was the best version of Durant. The one in the finals who was hitting game-winning shots and winning MVPs against LeBron James. There's a chance that the apex of one of the best basketball players to ever play, who is the best player on the most loaded basketball team of my lifetime, came and went while we all whined and bitched about how we didn't like it and how it wasn't fair. That possibility makes it a question more complicated than I think I was ever really ready to ask, much less answer. How will we remember the years when Kevin Durant came in first?